Hey guys, my name is Matthew, and today we are talking about the pros and cons of banning books. Here we go. This video comes out of recent news headlines about a school district in California that is reportedly banning books. I'll link a couple articles below. You can make the decision about whether or not what they're doing is even banning books or not. But it's had me thinking a lot about book banning in general. Banning a book most typically is a school district or a set of schools that decides, hey, we don't want this book in our school library anymore. Sometimes it's a municipality deciding we don't want these books in our library system at all. So like the Free Public Library doesn't have certain books, certain classic novels. And this is a hot topic issue. It's one that, for me personally, growing up, it always felt like Fahrenheit 451 or Nazi Germany or some totalitarian regime where books weren't allowed. And I think the issue is a little bit more nuanced than that. That's where this conversation comes from. For instance, any child sexual abuse material doesn't belong in a public library, or like grooming manuals or whatever else. That kind of pornography-esque stuff just doesn't belong, obviously, in a school library. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who says that the school library should be stocking those types of materials. They're not legal, they're not savory in any way, shape, or form. They don't belong in the public library or the school library, and they're not even legal to be published, most of them. So it becomes a question not of whether or not books could or should ever be banned, but where is the line? What material do we allow and what material do we not? And what are the purposes behind some of those things? Today I'm going to give you a simple pro-con list, 3 pros and 3 cons for banning books. Hopefully this list gives you just a little bit of an insight, a little bit perspective from the other side, and allows you to see maybe why or why not a school district would consider making a decision like banning books from their library. The first reason that people want to ban certain books in certain schools or certain school districts is because the content is not appropriate for the age level that it's targeting. A classic example of this would be a book like The Outsiders, which is targeted towards young kids or maybe middle schoolers. In that book, there's lots of violence, gang violence in particular, drugs, alcohol use, that many people would argue is not appropriate for the age level that it's targeting. There are slang words, there is violence, there's explicit drug usage and alcohol usage, and the book, The Outsiders, is arguably not appropriate for that age. Similar arguments have been made for movies and video games, and they've put rating systems on movies, for instance, that say, hey, if you're not 13 years or older, you probably shouldn't be watching this movie. Or if you're not an adult, you're not even allowed to come see this movie if it's rated R. But for books, there's no such rating system, and we allow children to access any of those books. An argument that's contrary to this, a reason why we should allow children to access content that may be, quote unquote, above their age level, is because actually they're going to access that content in some way anyway. That content, will either arrive to them in a movie or in a video game, or for a lot of children in our nation, maybe that's stuff that they are dealing with at home. That's stuff that they are dealing with in real life. And this is relatable content that's going to help them to be able to understand what it is that they're dealing with. Another pro for book banning is people use the argument, they say, hey, we're not saying you're not allowed to read the book. If as a parent you're saying, hey, I want my kids to be able to read The Outsiders, it's still available for purchase. You can buy it from a bookstore, from Amazon, from wherever you want to get it from. The content is not off limits. We just don't want to specifically have it stocked in our school or in our public library. Interestingly, the same argument can be made against book banning as well, though, because when you ban a book, for instance, The Great Gatsby, what people have found in studies is that actually surges the popularity of that book and causes many, many more people to read it than if it had never been banned. The news articles that populate around book banning actually causes the book to become much more popular than if they had just left it alone to begin with. The last argument that people really use for book banning, and this is kind of the crux of the whole thing, parents really want to be able to control the material that their kids are ingesting. That doesn't mean they don't want them to know about some of those hard issues involving sexuality, drugs, explicit content, and language, but instead that they want to be able to shape the way that their kids are receiving that information, as opposed to letting some potentially random author shape their thoughts and feelings surrounding any given subject matter. Against book banning, though, many people would argue one of the best ways for children to learn about any of that explicit content is to hear about it from a diverse group of authors and people who have put out works. What do you think? Do you think schools should make decisions about what books should and should not be banned in their libraries? Or do you think that everything should be fair game? Let me know in the comments below what you think about book banning. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this content, do feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, stay safe out there.